enlightenment today. Okay, we're holding on Mem Aleph Amud Aleph 41a, and we've been learning about the law of the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's takana. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana about the shaking of the lulav, that it should be done even outside of Yerushalayim or outside the Beis Hamikdash. It should be done every day of Sukkot. Normally, that was only done in the Beis Hamikdash, or according to the Rambam, it was only done in Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, who lived at the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, he established as a zecher to the Mikdash, as a remembrance for the Beis Hamikdash. He established it should be waved every day of Sukkot, all 7 days. Yesterday we mentioned that this machlokes of the Rashi and the Rambam about what's the law of Yerushalayim itself. Is Yerushalayim similar to the Beis Hamikdash? Was Yerushalayim considered the gvulin, the outside of the Beis Hamikdash? So this opinion of the Rambam that Yerushalayim is really similar to the Beis Hamikdash. So we spoke about it. We spoke about the practical side of it, that it would actually mean that in today's day and age, you have to be more machmir in Yerushalayim about shaking lulav and esrog because of the biblical obligation. So it would have all the biblical laws of shaking the lulav and esrog, and one of them would be that you have to own it. You'd have to say matana manas lahachzir every single day of Sukkot. And then, of course, you have the other laws of different types of blemishes on the esrog, or different types of issues with the esrog that outside of Israel, outside of the Beis Hamikdash, officially are only rabbinic, and rabbinically certain things were permissible. But if it's biblical, then you'd have all the stringencies that we have on the first day of Sukkot in the entire Yerushalayim. So it adds a lot of stringencies to the holiday of Sukkot, according to the Rambam, if you're in Yerushalayim. But at the same time, it also gives you an opportunity to fulfill a biblical mitzvah. Outside of Yerushalayim, you can only fulfill it rabbinically. But if you're in Yerushalayim, you get the opportunity, or if you're near Yerushalayim, go to Yerushalayim and fulfill it biblically, be able to fulfill the mitzvah on a biblical level. Now, there is a question that's asked in the commentaries. So why wouldn't people go to the Beis Hamikdash and shake the lulav on the other days of Sukkot in the time of the Beis Hamikdash? They should have gone to the Beis Hamikdash and shaken the lulav. Or according to the Rambam, are you obligated to go to the Yerushalayim to shake the lulav? So the commentaries understand that it's not really an obligation, even though normally we would think that there's like an expectation. You should, just like you have a mitzvah to put tzitzis on, even though it's not in essence, you're exempt if you don't have a garment that's 4 corners. But the Gemara understands that if you don't run after a positive mitzvah, if there's punishment that's coming to the world, it could affect someone who doesn't put tzitzis on. So the question would be, so wouldn't that apply to, like in Yerushalayim? It should have been an obvious thing. Everyone would have to go to the Beis Hamikdash and shake the lulav. You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. According to the Rambam, anyone around Yerushalayim, on the suburbs of Yerushalayim, or the outskirts of the cities around Yerushalayim, they should be obligated to go to Yerushalayim to fulfill the mitzvah. So commentaries say that it wouldn't have been that level of an obligation because it says the Torah makes it pretty clear that you are not obligated, you're not expected to shake it more than the first day, at least on a biblical level. And the fact that in the Beis Hamikdash they did it, that it was done all 7 days, is learned from a pasuk, but it's not an expectation that everyone should go there and shake it. So that's the understanding here. So again, this is we're just adding in the Rambam's opinion over here. And it's interesting, David had mentioned yesterday that David showed us that note where they say that there seems to be a Yerushalmi that supports the Rambam's explanation. Now, The Gemara, the Mishnah then added in another law about the Yom Hanef. That Yom Hanef Kula Yasser, that the day of the waving is all Asr in Chodosh. And uh, Chodosh is the new grain. And this is a very interesting thing, that very surprising that we don't keep Chodosh. It's in Shulchan Aruch. It seems it supposedly is a more of a obvious thing that Chodesh is it's a biblical obligation, and the leniencies that people think of, that, well, outside of Israel, time of there's no Beis Hamikdash, that doesn't seem to be an acceptable excuse. In other words, it's a machlokes in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, and the psak, the halacha, follows the view that it applies everywhere. That's the accepted view. So it is very surprising, this law, that we seem to have a leniency on Chodesh. And the source of our heter seems to be a Bach. I'm just pulling up over here online. They have this is the story. There seems to be a machlokes. There is a machlokes about chutz la'aretz, and and um, and there is a mishnah in there's a stam mishnah that that's I think in Arla, where it says clearly that that the halacha is that it applies everywhere. And so based on that, it seems like that's who the halacha follows. And so the question is, why are we lenient? So the Bach looked for a heter. Now, seemingly the reason he looked for a heter was because everyone was makel. Here, the Mishnah in Arla, I found it. Mishnah in Arla says, Chodesh aser min ha-Torah b'chol makom. Chodesh is aser from the Torah. The new grain is aser min ha-Torah every place. So that Mishnah, and the Rambam paskins that way. Chodesh aser gam b'chutz la'aretz, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. And so, even though there was a machlokes in another Gemara about it, but because there's a stam mishnah in Arla, that seems to be the halacha. The Rambam paskins that way. The Rambam brings that it's aser, and so it's a big topic. Why should we be lenient? What's the source of being lenient? So the Bach seems to have tried to found a heter. The heter is based on the fact that it's owned by a goy. That because the grain is owned by the goy, tvua of goyim are not usher with the isser of chodosh. So it's the grain of goyim, and that's what he wants to rely on. That it's because of that we are lenient. Again, it's a new thing in America to be makbid on chodosh. Previously, who was careful for chodosh? You couldn't. There was no one. You had no access to know how where the grain, when the grain was harvested, and so on. And then nevertheless, it seems like everyone was lenient, and so they rely on this Bach. The Bach supposedly he made some type of a decree that you can't be machmer. I'm paskening that it's permissible, and you're not allowed to be machmer unless you're very machmer in other areas. Then you could be machmer. It's a very interesting thing that he They took on, like, he really wanted to make it uh, a heter for it because no one seemed to be careful about it. So he tried very hard to find this heter, and it seems like the whole world sort of relied on the Bach's heter, the Bach's leniency, that because it's grain is owned by a non-Jew, that is there's no isser. Now that's first of all, what's interesting is what would come out is if you did know that the wheat came from a Jewish owner, you would have to be machmer according to that. See, we just know of the heter, but if you have to know what the reason is, if you know the reason, you might realize that heter doesn't apply in certain scenarios. But in any event, that this heter of the Bach seems to be what the world is relying on to be lenient about Chodesh. And now, in today's day, people have become more machmer, Baruch Hashem, and they're able to keep track of the grain of the wheat. They're able to buy wheat that's that they make sure that it has to have taken root. If it took root before the 16th of Nisan, that's what is the cutoff date. As long as it took root by that time, it's considered to have to be that the day of the 16th permits it. Yes, David.
Yeah, when I was telling the note yesterday, you were saying that it's a shame that he doesn't put where in the Jerusalem Talmud Yerushalmi it is. So I asked my Microsoft Copilot, which is the AI, and I put that note in, and I said, "Do you know where in the Jerusalem Talmud this is?" And it said specifically, this is discussed in Talmud Yerushalmi Sukkah 3:11.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm assuming is Parak Gimel.
Which is the parak we're in. Right.
Yeah.
I guess that would have been the obvious thing. It's probably our parak. Oh, yeah, 311. All right, we'll have to take a look. I don't own a Yerushalmi, but I'll when I go to Shul, I'll take, or maybe I could look it up online probably. 311.
Then it tells, if you like, we can explore nuances of the debate, and then you suggest the question. So it says, can you provide more context of the Sukkah 311? So I guess it tells you, and then it says, what are the differences in interpretation among the authorities? And it's amazing that this tells you stuff like this.
David, you're going to be our AI expert over here.
Oh boy.
There's some free courses from different universities actually on AI. So if you want to become an expert. Okay. So Yasha Kayak, I'll have to take a look.
Rabbi, could I mention something? The Hadash, when you say Hadash, is that the new grain?
Yeah, the new grain.
Yashan, Kemeth Yashan is the older grain, which would be before. Okay.
Right.
So is that the distinction you're making? Because I wasn't sure.
If it's owned by a Jew or a non-Jew, yeah.
But the goy cannot own the Yashan, you're saying. I mean, there would be an issue with that too. Older grain.
A goy can do whatever they want. The question is, if we can buy their grain, we have to worry about chodesh. Yashan, there's no problem with. Old grain, there's no problem with. It's new grain. That's the problem. Okay, so it's not a problem if it's old grain. That's for sure. It seems that the Sephardim were always careful about this. I don't know how they could have been careful in America to be to always figure out that the grain. Maybe they used to buy grain before and leave it for a year. Maybe they would all store their own. But how do you buy produced foods then, like pizza shop or pretzels or how would they know? I don't know how the Sephardic people would be careful in today's day. I guess the OU, the Hechsherim maybe they might they have access to like information. I don't know if the 30, 40 years ago, I don't know if they were so on top of things to be able to I wonder how the Sephardic people were careful with they couldn't buy at bakeries. They would only bake their own stuff. I wonder how they did it. It'd be interesting to know the history of the yashan, the people who were makbid on it when it wasn't popular here in America. Like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you never even heard of yashan. But but anyway, bottom line is that our Mishnah tells us that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana that Yom Hanef is Kula Yasser, that this day of the 16th day of Nisan, which is the second day of Pesach, that is the day when they were supposed to bring the korban omer in the Beis Hamikdash. If you have a Beis Hamikdash, once you bring that korban, then all of the grain from the previous year is now permissible. Anything that was rooted until now is permissible. And Yom Hanef permits it. And the Omer, excuse me, I should say, the Omer permits it. But what about if there's no Beis Hamikdash? There's no Beis Hamikdash. So before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came around, so the entire day was permissible to eat. Once that day kicked in, once the morning kicked in, it was permissible now to eat because we're not going to wait for the korban. There's no korban. So once the day kicks in, and they learned it from a pasuk, it says until this day. And if there's a Beis Hamikdash, then the other pasuk kicks in ad haviachem until you bring the omer, you bring that korban. But now it was a barley sacrifice. But now, if there's no Beis Hamikdash, so then once it got light, it was permissible. Yochanan Zakkai said, no, the whole day is usher. Why the whole day? Because he says, what's going to happen if the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt? And you're going to start eating. You're going to say, last year, 16th of Nisan. 16th of Nisan, we're allowed to eat chodosh. The new grain is now permissible. So you're going to start eating it in the morning. Line up to eat it. Last year we did that. And you won't realize that there's a difference when there's a Beis Hamikdash and there's no Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, let's be machmer. Let's say don't eat it all day on the 16th, and then you won't have this problem. The Gemara says, how do we know that you are supposed to make a Zeicher LaMikdash? The Gemara says, because there's a pasuk. I actually looked up the pasuk. Basically, it's a pasuk in Yirmiyah where Hashem is telling the Jewish people that he's ultimately going to redeem them and he'll punish all of those that cause them to suffer. And it says, Ki ale arucha lach, when I bring a healing to you, from your wounds I will heal. Ne'um Hashem, says Hashem, Ki nidacha karu lach, even though, this is the way to translate it, even though they called you the forsaken one, and they said, Tzion, this is Zion, Deirish Ein Law, no one cares about it, no one seeks it out. Even though they said that, it's not true, no one cares about you, you're forsaken, that's not true. I am going to redeem all of you. That's the pasuk. Now, what the pasuk is basically saying is that they said that Ein Deirish Law, no one seeks it out. So we learn from there, Deirish Ein Law, that implies like we really should be seeking it out. And so therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai understood from this pasuk that we should do our job to seek out Tzion. And what that means is that we should make a Zeicher LaMikdash. We should make things that commemorate the Beis Hamikdash. Zeicher LaMikdash. So what was a way of commemorating the Beis Hamikdash? What our Mishnah talks about is shaking the lulav every single day of Sukkot that commemorates, that makes us remember the Beis Hamikdash. We spoke yesterday at Tosfos's question. Tosfos asks a question, he answers it, but then he leaves off that it's not such a good answer. Tosfos's question was, why does our Mishnah talk about Pesach? It talks about Sukkot and it talks about Pesach. What's about Pesach? Yom Hanef, this day that they would do Hanafas Omer, that they would wave the Omer. Well, what's that applicable over here? That you made a gzeda? Okay, so you made a gzeda. Don't learn that in Psachim. Don't teach it over here. So Taisvus answered that it seems that they must have made both the takonis, both decrees at the same time. Then Taisvus says, so that's why it mentions both. They said it. So he says, but there's another place where it only mentions the Pesach one, doesn't mention the Lulav one. So if it always mentions both because they were both made at the same time, so mention both all the places. And then he says, and then there's another place where it mentions a lot of takonis and includes these and many others. Why does it say all of them? So Taisus is basically unsatisfied with his initial answer. So Taisus says, so the commentaries try to come up with an answer that one of the answers, at least that's given, is that that the decree of shaking lulav every day of Sukkot, in a certain sense, was very saddening. That although it sounds nice because you're making a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, but it's really the perspective of Zeicher Lamigdash was very painful to the Jewish people. They see, oh, we're making Zeichers already. We should get ready for a long Golus. That's what it sounded like. Chevra, get ready for a long exile because we're going to be making now decrees so that you don't forget about the Beis. You have to have commemoration of the Beis Hamikdash. So that is not something that really made the people feel depressed about. So the Rabbi Yochanan Zaki, at the same time, he also made a decree the opposite way. And what was the decree the opposite way? That the Yom Hanef is Kula Yasser, that the day that they wave that they bring the carbon of the Omer, that day is going to be prohibited because the Beis Hamikdash might be built any day, and you're going to make a mistake and you're going to end up sinning by eating from the new grain before they actually bring the carbon on that day. And therefore, we're going to say that the whole day should be usher to eat the chodesh, the new grain. And if we prohibit the new grain from eating the whole day, then you won't have this problem if the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt immediately. So this sort of rectified in it, gave comfort to those who were initially affected by the initial decree of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai about the lulav. And this answers why the other place where it talks about the decree of the Pesach of Yom Hanef, there it doesn't have to mention lulav because that's not painful to hear. The lulav decree is painful to hear, that we have to make a zeicher lamigdash. We have to commemorate what they used to do in the Beis Hamikdash. Otherwise, you'll forget what they used to do in the Beis Hamikdash. So implying like it's going to be a long exile. The other decree is fine. The other decree is very comforting. Yom Hanef is usher because there you don't have to mention the lulav decree. Yom Hanef is kula yasa. You could say very, very good over there. That's great. The Beis Hamikdash might be built any day now. So that's a positive decree. So that would be a way of answering Taisus. Now the Gemara had said that what exactly is this problem with the Yom Hanef? The Yom Hanef, you're gonna bring this carbon, and the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. So we want to prohibit the whole day. So when was the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt? If it's rebuilt, on the day of the 16th, so when the morning kicked in, it wasn't built yet. If so, then it's already permissible to eat the chadash, because once the morning kicks in, once it's Heyer HaMizrach, the east lights up, permissible to eat. You're allowed to eat the Chadash. There's no Beis Hamikdash. There's no Beis Hamikdash. You're allowed to eat the Chadash. It must be that the Beis Hamikdash is built already. The night before, it's built already. Whenever it was, though, during the year, it got built. If it was built before, so then what's the problem of the what they'll bring the Omer? What, you're afraid they're going to bring it a little late? They'll buy chatzos. We know that they on a regular year they would always it always happened that they brought it before chatzos. In fact, you don't even have to call the hotline to see if the Omer was brought. You're allowed to just assume chatzos they brought it already. That was the rule. So this year also, that's assumed. Why did he prohibit the whole day? He should have only prohibited until midday. Chatzos is midday. That's when he should have. That's when it should be permissible. So the Gemara answers that it's a big avoida. The avoida of the Omer. The Omer was a big deal. Because it was a big deal, there's a Rashi goes through all the details of this the Omer, that how it had to be done. They had to dry it out, and they would roast this barley. Then they had to grind it. They had to let the water, any liquid, should come out of it. Then they would grind it, a big grinder, small grinder, and they would go sift it 13 times, 13 different sifters, and the big sifters, small sifters, maybe, and ultimately, if they had just finished building the Beis Hamikdash before, so they couldn't start it at night because they just finished building the Beis Hamikdash at night. So then they end up, it might take longer than normal, and therefore. So the two examples that the Gemara gives is, first of all, maybe they built the Beis Hamikdash the night of the 16th, or even if it wasn't the night of the 16th, it was right before the night, it was actually the 15th. The 15th, right before dark. So either it's the night of the 16th, or then the 15th, but it's right before it gets dark. So you ultimately can't really start anything at night. You end up needing the day to do all this work, and it might happen that it'll end after midday, and then therefore Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said no chadash on that whole day. Taisus over here talks about. He says there's an opinion that says you could be makriv, a sacrifice, even if there's no Beis Hamikdash. Taisus says, but that's only if there's a mizbeach built. So it really boils down to the mizbeach being built. If the mizbeach is built, fine, then it would be okay. But if there's no mizbeach, there's no altar, that's the problem. So according to the opinion that you could bring a korban, even though there's no bias, there's no Beis Hamikdash, yeah, but there still has to be an altar there to bring korbanos on. Then Taisus talks about samach l'shkias hachama, that you finished it right next to shkia. So Taisus brings some opinions, some commentaries want to say, there are commentaries that want to say that this doesn't mean the 15th. On the 15th, that would mean the first day of Pesach, before dark, before it gets dark, which means before the beginning of the second day of Pesach. So on the 15th day, it can't mean that because we're dealing with it's Yom Tov, and must be talking about they must be talking about Erev Yom Tov, because the Ein Binyan Beis Hamikdash b'Yom Yom Tov. So he says that's why some want to say that it's talking about Erev Yom Tov on on the 14th day before Shkia of the 15th, not on the 15th before Shkia of the 15th, because you can't build a Beis Hamikdash then. So he says, Taisa says that's not a question because just like Rashi explained that there's no Beis Hamikdash at night, ain't binya Beis Hamikdash balayla, ain't binya Beis Hamikdash, there's no Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tov. But nevertheless, which is really last week's parsha, we said you're not allowed to build the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos. That was why it says Shabbos, hiktim Shabbos, the mizbinya to the mizbeach, right? That ain't binya the mizbeach doesn't doicha Shabbos. So the same thing applies. The Beis Hamikdash wasn't doicha Yom Tov, wasn't doicha Shabbos, and is not supposed to be built at night. But the thing is, Taisa said, just like Rashi says, the answer is that the Beis Hamikdash is really already built, and Hashem is just going to lower it. It's not being built by humans. Hashem is just going to lower it from Shemayim. It's already built with all its glory. It's just going to be revealed. And so it's already built. It's going to come down from heaven. Migdash Hashem, Kainenu Yodecha, the Migdash of Hashem. That it's not really done by our hands. It's done by it's made by Hashem. So this is the so therefore Taisa says it doesn't mean you don't have to say it's the Erev Yom Tov. You could say it's on the first day of Yom Tov when the Beis Hamikdash is built, because it's ultimately not being built by people, it's being built by Hashem. So that's where we're up to over here in the Gemara. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Amar. The Gemara, we're 3 lines up from the bottom of the page on 41a. 41a, the bottom of the page, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Amar. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok wants to give another answer why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would say that the entire day is prohibited to have chadash, to have the new grain. Why would the entire day be prohibited to have the new grain? He says, Amar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says Rabbi Yehuda Amra. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That what does Rabbi Yehuda say? The Amar that he says, Menat hu asur. That he says, Menat Chodesh is also the entire day. Dechsiv, as it says in the pasuk, and now we turn the page, ad etzem hayom hazeh, until the essence of this day. Until the essence of this day means ad itzumai shel yom, until, I'm not exactly sure how to translate itzumai shel yom, but it's the day is prohibited. And etzem hayom hazeh itzumai shel yom, it's the essence of this day is bringing the yom, of the day of bringing the yom. And the kasavar, and he holds, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai holds, ad v'yad bechlal, that whenever it says until, it means until and including. This is a famous question which we had in the 4th parak of Brachos, that when the Torah says ad, until, does it mean until and up until, or does it mean until and including? And the Gemara here tells us that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai follow this idea that you're right, it says ad etzem hayom hazeh, and it's until this day. But what does it mean until this day? Does it mean until and up into this day, until it gets light on this day? Or does it mean until and including this day? That means that it's prohibited until this entire day finishes, until and including this day. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the way Rabbi Yochanan seems to be learning, like Rabbi Yehuda, even though Rabbi Yehuda is his student, really. But Rabbi Yehuda clarifies his opinion, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, from this decree that he says a whole day, makes sense that he's holding that same opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and that is that it means until and including. Ad etzem hayom hazeh means ad v'yad bechlal. So maybe that's what it means. Ad itzumai shel yom, until the essence of the day means the entire day. the itzumai shel yoim, the atzmai shel yoim. Rashi seems to say it means until that day. In other words, don't translate ad etzamayim azeh means until the morning hours of the day, but translates it to mean ad itzumai shel yoim. It means until the entire day, and because it means until the entire day of bringing the yomer, and it says until, and until means until and including, because savar ad biad b'chlal. Therefore, he holds biblically it's prohibited to eat from the yom hanev, eat from the new chodosh grain, biblically prohibited all day. Now, according to this answer of the Gemara, it comes out that we got to go back really and think about why does the Mishnah include this decree? This is not really a decree. This is a halacha that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai revealed, which basically is ad viad b'chlal. That when it says until, it means until and including. And so now you got to reevaluate it's not even a decree. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't even make this as a decree. This is like a way of darshaning the psukim. He explained, he expounded on the verses. He came out that this is prohibited. He says he made a decree about sukkahs that you have to take lulav, and now he also said that v'sheyehei yom hanef kula yaser. He also said that the yom hanef should be completely aser. This is not a decree according to the previous understanding of the Gemara. It's a decree. He made a decree about the yom hanef. But now we're translating it to mean that he expounded on the Yom HaNeif. He expounded that the Yom HaNeif is part of the law of Ad Viad B'chlal. Ad Viad B'chlal is that the whole day becomes usher from a biblical standpoint. It's interesting that now you got to reevaluate the answer of why these two laws go together. What's it doing here? Now, the Gemara is not satisfied with this either, with this answer. The Gemara says, "Umi savar la kavosei," does really hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Does Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Gemara says, "V'hamaflig poligale." He argues on him, "Ditnan," because we have a Mishnah in Menachos, Mishachar Beis Hamikdash. Once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, his can Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sheyom hanef kula yaser. He made a decree that the yom hanef is completely prohibited with chadash. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, v'haloi min ha'Torah hu aser. Isn't it aser Torah law? What are you making a decree? So it sounds like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a decree because he's telling him back. Now, he's not telling him because I said he was a student. I mean to say that he was in a later generation of Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda was a later generation, and so Rabbi Yehuda says, he says, you made a decree about Yom HaNev. He says it's prohibited Menat Torah because it says until this day you're not allowed to have the grain, the new grain, and it means until the whole day, the essence of the day, which basically means ad viad b'chlal, until and including, which means until the night afterwards you can't have any chadash. So he argues with Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says in the Mishnah it's hiskin. He made a decree about that day that it's all us. Rabbi Yehuda comes along and says, you made a decree? The whole day is also from the Torah law. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yehuda Hudakotoi. Rabbi Yehuda made a mistake in understanding Rabbi Yochanan. Who Savar Midrabanan Kamer? Rabbi Yehuda thought that Rabbi Yochanan meant Midrabanan. The Gemara says, Laihi, it's not true. Midaraisa Kamar. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying the same thing as you're saying. He said he was talking Daraisa. What do you mean? Well, Hiskin Kamar, but he said the word Hiskin, he made a decree. My Hiskin, what does it mean? Hiskin Darash Vihiskin. It means he darshan, he expounded on the pasuk of Ad Etzam Yemazeh. And he said, well, Ad Biad B'chlal. And therefore, Vihiskin, and he clarified the law, not that he made a decree, but he clarified it that that it's different. They were used to eating the new grain right after they brought the carbon, and if you didn't know if they brought the carbon, you ate the new grain after midday. And he said he expounded on the pasuk, and he said, no, you can't do that anymore. That it's going to be prohibited the whole day because Ad Viad B'chlal, and it's no Beis HaMikdash. So he established, which doesn't mean he made a new decree. It means he revealed what's prohibited. He made new clarity on it. He clarified the new halachic ramifications. That's what he did. He made sure that they're not going to rely on the way things were until now. He made a change, so to speak, but not his own change. It was based on the Torah law. Okay, we are up to the next mission. Yom Tov Rishon Shalchat, the first day of Sukkot, Shechol Yes b'Shabbos, that fell on Shabbos. So the problem is you're not allowed to carry. In the olden days, well, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they would shake the lulav on Shabbos, but you were not allowed to carry the lulav to shul. So what would you do? Everyone would bring the lulav to shul. The machra, excuse me, the machras mashkimen uvoyin. The next day they would get up early and come. Kol echad v'yechad makir es shaloi. Everyone would recognize his own lulav. V'noidlai, and he would take it. Take his. Mipnei shamar chachamim, because the rabbi said, you can't fulfill the obligation with your friend's lulav. You got to take your own. The other days of Sukkot, you are allowed to fulfill your obligation with the lulav of your friend. Now, Rabbi Yossi says, Yom Tov Rishon Shalchag Shkolis b'Shabbos. If Yom Tov Rishon, first day of Sukkot, fell on Shabbos, v'shachach, and he forgot, v'hoitzias halulav l'Rosh Hashanah, he carried the lulav, he took it out to the Rosh Hashanah. Potter, he is exempt from bringing a korban for shoygig by transgressing the prohibition of Shabbos by mistake. So he is exempt because he was involved in a mitzvah and being engrossed and nervous about the mitzvah and rushing to do it, he made a mistake about Shabbos. And Rabbi Yossi holds that when you make a mistake in a Dvar mitzvah by shoygeg, something that's prohibited with kares, with being cut off, and you did a shoygeg, but it was because you were busy with a mitzvah, you're exempt from a korban. That is Rabbi Yossi's opinion. So we've got the Mishnah telling us about the first day of Sukkot that falls on Shabbos. The law is the way they would do it is you would bring your lulav to shul before Shabbos. That's the way it was done. They would bring their lulav to shul before Shabbos, and this way they would recognize it. Okay, why? Couldn't they use someone else's? No, you have to have your own. You have to have your own lulav and esrog because it has to be shalai. It's the first day of Sukkot. You have to have your own. You're not yaitza with someone else. Okay. The Gemara says, Menani Mili, how do we know that? That you can't fulfill the obligation with someone else's lulav. Tan Rabban, because the rabbis taught in a brayso. It says, Ulakachtem, and you should take lachem biyam arishoy. Ulakachtem, what does that mean? Shetei lakicha biyad kol echad v'yechad. That there should be a taking in the hand of every single yid. Each yid is obligated in taking lulav. So lakachtem, each of you. What does it mean, lochem? Yours. Mishalochem, it should be yours, not someone else's. Lohoitzi es hashov es hagozel, not something that's borrowed, not something that's stolen. From here, the rabbi said, you're not fulfilling the obligation on the first day of Sukkot with the lulav of someone else's, unless your friend gives it to you as a gift, and you would be allowed to give a gift on Yom Tov, and therefore you would be able to fulfill the mitzvah. And there's a story. So we just brought a brisa. It says this lakachtem, every yid should take. Lachem has to be yours. And the brisa continues. There's a story with Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Loza ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Shahayu Besvina. They were coming on a boat. Lulav. Ella Rabbi Gamliel. And the only one that had a lulav was Rabbi Gamliel. Bilvad, alone. Shalakochoy be'elav zuz. He bought it for 1,000 zuz. Can you imagine? Someone really made a, you talk about people getting ripped off, buying these lulav. He bought it for 1,000 zuz, this lulav. Talei Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel took the lulav. V'yotzabai fulfilled the mitzvah. Unasana Rabbi Shua Matana gave it to Rabbi Shua as a gift. Talei Rabbi Shua v'yotzabai. Shua will fulfill the obligation. Unasana Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Matana. He gave it to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as a gift. Talei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. V'yotzabai, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah took it and he fulfilled his obligation. The son of Rabbi Akiva gave it as a gift to Rabbi Akiva. Talei Rabbi Akiva v'yotzabai, he fulfilled his obligation. V'achzira Rabbi Gamliel, and then he returned it to Rabbi Gamliel. So what do we see from here? That you need to own your lulav. You can't just lend it. Why didn't Rabbi Gamliel just lend it? He had to give it as a gift. You see from the story. The Gemara says, "Lama li lameimar hachsira." Why does it have to tell us that he returned it to Rabbi Gamliel? It's coming to tell us something on a side note. Matana al manas lahachzir shmo matana. That when you give a gift on the condition that it is returned, that is considered a real gift. Even though he's going to return it. It's called yours. Ki ha diamad Rava, like this that Rava said. Hey, lacha esrog zal and take this esrog on the condition that you return it to me. Netaloi v'yatzaboy. He took it and he fulfilled his obligation. Hechziroi yatza. If he returned it, he fulfilled his obligation. Lo yachziroi lo yatza. If he doesn't return it, he doesn't fulfill his obligation. Why does that have to tell us that he bought it for that crazy amount of money? Elav zuz. And to show how valuable mitzvahs were on these great people, and specifically Rabbi Gamliel, to show how valuable, how much they would pay for a mitzvah, be able to do a mitzvah. Amar le Mar bar Meimar Ravashi. Mar bar Meimar said to Ravashi, Abba, my father, a Meimar, my father who was a Meimar. This person is the son of a Meimar. So he says, Abba, my father, Cheluyay Kamatzli Bey. He would daven while holding the lulav. That's how much he loved, he cherished the mitzvah that he would daven while holding it. Gemara says, Meisvei. He asked a contradiction. When a person davens, person shouldn't be a spalo. The person shouldn't hold tefillin in his hand, Sefer Torah, by his chest, by his bosom, be a spalo and daven that way. You shouldn't hold something. You're going to be thinking that it shouldn't fall, and you won't be comfortable when you daven, so you shouldn't be holding things. Person shouldn't urinate when you're holding them. Shouldn't sleep while holding them. Not a permanent sleep, not a temporary sleep. We're afraid they're gonna fall and it'll be a disgrace. Shmuel says, Sakin Ukaara. I'm sorry. Sakin Ukaara Kikar Umais Hare Elu Kiyotze Bahan. And Shmuel adds that not only these holy things, but also things of danger. If you have a knife, afraid it'll fall and it'll puncture. Your foot will be punctured. Plate of food, it'll be wasted. Bread, don't go to sleep with it when it's in your hand. Might fall out and get disgusting. Money could fall out and get scattered. So the law is these also have the same law that you're not allowed to hold them while you're davening. So the question is, how do you hold a lulav when you're davening? The question says, Hasam lav mitzvah. Those things, it's not a mitzvah to hold them, and therefore it's just the weight, the tarid bahu, and it's and you are like concerned. You're busy with holding them. But this by a meimar mitzvah ninu, it's a mitzvah like tarid bahu, and it's not negatively affecting him. He's not tarud, busy thinking of, worried about it, and therefore he would be allowed to hold a lulav and esrog while he's davening. Tanya was taught in a brayso or tesefta. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok Omer, Kach Hoyam and Hagan Shalayim Yerushalayim. This was the custom, the people of Yerushalayim. That what? Adam Yetzim base of a lulav. The other person would go out of his house and he would have his lulav. Haylech lebesak. Let's go with the shul. Lulav biyad, his lulav was in his hand. Kairei Kriya Shema Mispalel. He would say Shema and daven. The lulav biyad, his lulav was in his hand. Kairei Torah. He would read in the Torah. The noise is kapov, and he would do the berchas koyanim, and he would do berchas koyanim. Manicha al gabe karka, and then because he wouldn't, I'm sorry, the noise kapov manicha al gabe karka. When he would do berchas koyanim, he couldn't hold it, so he would place it on the ground, standing up. He would go to visit the sick and to comfort the mourners. Lulav biyadei, lulav was in his hand. Nichnas lebeis hamedrash, came to the place of learning, the house of learning, to study. He would send the lulav because there it might fall out of his hand. So he would send it. He's busy learning, he might forget. There, we're more nervous. He's busy, he gets engrossed in his learning, so he sends it in the hands of his son or his servant or his shliach, and might fall out of his hands. But you don't put it on the ground. It would be because it's going to be for a long time. It would be more of a bizui mitzvah. But before, when you were doing brachas koyanim, it's not a problem putting it down for just a short moment. But here it's a tashmish mitzvah. You put it down for a long time. You're going to be busy learning. Send it home. Send it home. Your son, your servant, your shliach. My komash bolon. So what is he coming to let us hear with these? What's Rabbi Lazar Bar Tzadok coming to let us hear with these things? Like diachakama hoyu's reason b'mitzvahs to show how much the people of Yerushalayim were so zariz in their mitzvahs, where they wanted to hold the lulav with them wherever they went.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so just a clarification. We're talking about Harvarium right now, because I don't think the normal run-of-the-mill individual had all these capabilities.
What are you referring to? You're saying to be able to hold it, to be able to pay 1,000 zuz?
Yes.
Okay, right, probably.
So when we're talking about all these things, we're talking about Havariim, not the normal Jew of that time who may not.
Easy.
So I'm not sure what you mean. Chaverim, you mean great. These are great scholars that are studying Torah all day. You mean to say rich people like Rabbi Gamliel? But when using the term chaverim, I'm not sure what your emphasis is.
I mean, the ones who are more educated than the usual. I mean,
right. Yeah, right. The other people wouldn't be shaykh to sit in the base of Medrash all day, right? And maybe some people, they're not going to be mavaka chaylim, they're going to go to work, right? The Gemara asks, so what are you coming to let us hear? But it is giving us an impression of what how zaris people should be in mitzvahs and how the people then were. It's still inspiring. We might not be able to live up to what they did, but to learn a little, we could take a little from it, And if that's my understanding is correct, what you're saying, like how are we supposed to learn from them? You're right. We're not going to follow.
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh.
I'm trying to understand who were the people that the Gemara is talking about.
Oh, okay.
So
Anshe Yerushalayim, the people of Jerusalem. That's who it's talking about. Who were they people? Who were they?
Does that mean that the Amei Haaretz also did this, or is this just the people who are educated and were learning and knew the law, etc.? So, who exactly are we including in all of this? I understand that we have to learn from it, and we should
right. I hear you. My understanding is always that the Anshe Yerushalayim were an exceptional group of people. I don't have a source offhand. I'd have to look and search in other Gemaras. But the Anshe Yerushalayim, my understanding were like these are like an exceptional group. But yeah, it's a good question. Let me see if I could find anything and find another source where it mentions that. But that's a good question. I know it talks about Benoist Yerushalayim, where they would the daughters of Yerushalmiites. But yeah, we'd have to take a look. That's a good question to look into. I don't know if David, do you have anything on your commentaries over there with the Anshe Yerushalayim? Who were these people? Like what type of, were they known for any other things? Like I'd have to like remember other Gemaras where it talks about Anshe Yerushalayim. But maybe you have, anyone have any notes on this about who the Anshe Yerushalayim are? Or?
No.
No notes. Okay. Well, we'll
Just
have to look up some other Gemaras.
Just at the end where it says the reason, it says the idea is to show you how vigilant they were in the performance of the mitzvahs and how much they cherished them, even if everybody was not in this category, so that other people should see all these different details. So you should see how the mitzvahs there were cherished by people.
That's you're reading from that? Are you reading from that? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. That's similar to what we just.
And also this thing of 1,000
your introduction to the Mishnah must have something.
Also
about Anshe Yerushalayim? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take a look there.
Why not? I didn't see it yet, but
I looked up what you told me yesterday, but it was pretty much what we said, that Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zak, it seems like a
standard crew, right?
We were talking about yesterday with the timing of when Rabbi Yochanan lived and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lived. Okay, but yeah, I'll take a look if it has anything about Anshe Yerushalayim. Okay, good resource. All right, Zygos everyone. Have a wonderful day.
There was a note.
Thank you, Rabbi.
David.
There was a note here about 1,000 zuz.
Yeah.
It says to appreciate the enormity of this sum, it should be noted that 1,000 zuz was equivalent to 8 months of an average worker's wages.